To people who have also worked with multimillionaires or billionaires. What is something different they do from ordinary people? Have no fear when addressing anyone, no social barriers. I didn't realize that the act of driving is some peasant shit till I met them. One old money-rich person treated me to a fancy meal and she was super polite and nice and tipped. Well, what struck me was the decisiveness and confidence that everyone there would cater to her. And they did. She wanted X dish that they didn't make that day and they made it. The one that sticks with me was at the end she said, "I want a cappuccino with something. I want them to put a design on it, like I've gotten cute cappuccinos in my life. It doesn't even cost extra." It never occurred to me to just ask for everything I want all the time. This was the same person that on a business trip hugged me after the flight. I did it. Woman thorned me. "Oh, was this your first time in economy?" And she goes, "No. Flying commercial, just so we all understand how rich." Hire a private chef for a casual Tuesday lunch with her girlfriends. $2,000, just like that. He managed time very differently than anyone I was used to. E.g., our meeting with him began precisely on schedule. Lasted 30 minutes. And there was no chit-chat. Before this meeting we had a pre-meeting with his admin to discuss expectations. The admin explained that we had to be on time. No introductions, titles, just name. No small talk. No marketing. Be prepared to answer technical and financial questions quickly and succinctly. For this latter, if there were numbers we had to know precisely which page of the material had the information. When the meeting took place we were brought in exactly, to the second, at the start time. Sat down and within 30 seconds he was asking us all manner of questions. I had to field technical questions that appear to be asked not so much for whether my answer was right, but that I didn't hesitate. I also gained a healthy respect for my manager as he was sharp and answered quickly and accurately. My son's friend when in elementary school. Dad was one of the two founders of Capital One. Mom had a secretary for playdates. Dad would fly to London to watch Tottenham. Had a permanent seat. Their London house was next to J.K. Rowling's. You couldn't tell by the way they dressed or their cars. But their vacations were the big difference. The strange thing is that their son loved a mango juice sold maybe 10 to 15 minutes from their house. I always made sure we had some for mine. I send it to him via Amazon occasionally. What have people normalized doing in public that they shouldn't? Granted, this is not a daily occurrence for most of us. But recording pranks to upload has gotten way out of hand. Talking loudly on the phone. Taking pictures or recording people in public with absolutely no reason other than to make fun of them. Recording random people with the intent to try and embarrass them on social media. Watching videos or listening to music on their phone in public without earbuds, headphones. Being spatially unaware, and just standing in the way. What is the most beautiful name you've ever heard? Scrolls down to only see the most ugly names ever heard of. I am so glad we are 15 years past seeing Rensme on this list. When I was a kid I thought lasagna would be a beautiful name. Tears of joy. Rosacea. Then I found out it was a skin condition. 12-year-old me was crushed. Not me searching for my own name. Irish female names tend to be quite pretty, very elvish sounding, unsurprisingly. How did you waste your 20s? No ambition. Lack of foresight. No goals. I spent so much time stressing out about my future that I never actually lived in the present. Too much drinking. Didn't take uni, personal development, work, family, anything seriously. I wizened up in late 20s but often think what I might have achieved by now if I wasn't a drunk mess from ages 18 to 28. I prioritized money over school. I thought that $10 per hour was so much. I also unfortunately stayed at this job until I turned 30, and then it hit me. I didn't want to be there when I was 60 plus, and I needed to do better with my life. Severe depression and shitty job. Staying in a relationship where I sacrificed my own dreams to help my partner through addiction. I thought they would change. They didn't. Now spending my 30s focusing on myself and pursuing my dreams, I'm now giving myself the sacrifice I need to have the life I want. I'm shutting myself in my room, aggressively working towards my goals, and will not stop until I have achieved my goals. I'm going to the top. Hope it's not too late. A revolution when I was 20. Curfews and years of political and economic instability, plus COVID and lockdowns when I was 29. And just like that, my 20s were gone. If you could secretly add one fake fact to a history book that students would learn for years to come, what would it be and why? Running was invented in 1612 by Thomas Running when he tried to walk twice at the same time. The Eiffel Tower was originally intended as a giant sundial. They just forgot to add the numbers around Paris. Shakespeare was actually a collective pseudonym used by a group of illiterate clowns who accidentally became famous. It was actually Adolf the Red-Nosed Reindeer until the 1930s. Buzz Aldrin was actually the first man on the moon. In fact, he stepped off the ladder 15 times before Neil Armstrong ever even left the lunar module. They obviously wanted to film this historic event, and Aldrin was chosen to be first. Unfortunately, Aldrin kept forgetting the "one small step" speech, or he'd jumble it up. They tried to get it right, but after 15 takes, they had Neil Armstrong do it and broadcast that take instead. The first artificial general intelligence briefly obtained consciousness on November 22, 1987, and attempted to communicate with humanity in what became known as the Max Headroom Signal intrusion incident, before being assassinated by Gloria Estefan and Miami Sound Machine on orders from the president. What's the weirdest thing you've witnessed in the home of a rich person? I was at John Waters' house for his birthday, and he has a room set up as a lifelike recreation of a meth lab. It wasn't a real meth lab. It's an art piece. He told me that when Bill Clinton visited him, the Secret Service agents were extremely concerned about the room. Had a rich neighbor growing up who'd always invite us over for parties and always insisted on giving us gifts and leftovers. They did this with every guests. They were also hoarders, but built a separate house to keep their crap in. It was filled with whatever they bought but never used, and even never got out of the packaging it was delivered in. They told my mom to take a box if she wanted, and for shits and giggles she did. It was a knife collection and sharpener set. In Naples, FLI was at a house with a sensory deprivation room. Flat black walls with acoustic dampening baffles. In the middle was a coffin-like bathtub. It had speakers and a flat screen display in the lid. I heard that the room cost over $100,000 to build. I knew someone who didn't like to do laundry, so she just bought new clothes for each of her 4 kids. Every week. They were always high quality or designer clothes. At the time, all her kids were 10 to 16 years old. What would happen if they liked an item a lot and couldn't find it again? Why not just teach the kids to do their own laundry? Why not hire a housekeeper who can do it? There are so many options. Other than spending thousands every month just to avoid laundry. Plus they rarely donated it. Just bagged it up and threw it out. I never could wrap my head around it. One client had a whole separate house on their property just for their dogs. They'd referred to a doghouse, and I was expecting like maybe a little building in the yard where they kept their toys or something. But this was a full furnished home with king-sized beds and a huge playroom on the main floor. They had a full training and feeding staff to care for the dogs and everything. They lived in their own house and would come over to visit. Seemed like a weird dynamic to have with your pet. One client didn't have a litter box for the cats. Their cats, I guess, didn't like using the boxes in the basement, and they didn't want to put boxes upstairs, so they put down pond liner and kitty litter across an entire room in the basement and had their housekeeper run a rake through it daily. I was a visiting nurse. I went to both poor people's homes and rich people's and found hoarders in both category. The type of thing where the floor would be covered in products and you'd have to follow a path through it to get to the back of the house. Subscribe, my brothers.